Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all good. Just a quick update from me and some quick thoughts, I guess, on the Raphinha situation. Now, we thought that Arsenal were very much leading the race for the Brazilian. We thought that Arsenal would come the closest to matching Leeds United's valuation. We knew that the first offer had been rebuffed. We were told that there was a meeting or some kind of contact due to take place this week, and we hoped that Arsenal were going to be able to come to some kind of compromise with Leeds United and strike a deal up for a player who we have been told, and it's been reported, is actually open to a move to Arsenal. However, all along, we've also been told that Raphinha's preference was to go to Barcelona and that Chelsea would be a preference as well. But up until this point, Chelsea hadn't entered the race, not officially anyway. And it gave a lot of Arsenal fans confidence that actually if we move quickly and we get this deal wrapped up sooner rather than later, we could simply beat Chelsea to it and ultimately land a very, very exciting player in the Brazilian winger Raphinha. However, Chelsea have now entered the race. They entered the race today. They verbally indicated to Leeds initially that they would go over £55 million with regards to their offer. And that, of course, was much closer to what Leeds were looking for the player. And if you listen to what Fabrizio Romano's had to say, or read what Fabrizio Romano has put out into the Twitter sphere, he says that a deal has now been agreed between Leeds United and Chelsea, and that it's now at the phase where Chelsea are going to discuss personal terms with the player. Now, I've said this to you guys on numerous occasions throughout this transfer window. I don't believe transfers take place like that anymore, not for the most part anyway. I think Chelsea would have already tested the waters. They would have already felt the situation out, and they would have known before meeting Leeds' valuation, or getting closer to it than Arsenal anyway, that Raphinha was interested in a move. And I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't disappointed. You know, I kind of looked at this window, and so far I think it's been largely positive, right? I think that Fabio Vieira is a really good signing. I'm delighted to see William Saliba coming back and hopefully being given the opportunity to prove his worth in the heart of the defence. We've signed Marquinhos, who's very much one for the future. Fabio Vieira, as I mentioned, you know, really talented player. Looking forward to seeing what he can do as well. Gabriel Jesus is the marquee signing for me. I'm delighted that this one is, you know, going to be announced in the next sort of 12, 24 hours. We're pretty sure of that now. We know he underwent a medical. And we also know that Gabriel Jesus has been to London Colney to fulfill his media duties as well. So we're looking forward to getting that announcement. And what we've heard tonight shouldn't detract from the fact that Gabriel Jesus is a really good, shrewd signing from Arsenal. And it's a signing that really is, in a lot of people's eyes, a statement of intent as to where this club are wanting to go. The fact that Gabriel Jesus chose Arsenal gives us a lot of encouragement, gives us encouragement that Arsenal still have a pull. But that doesn't mean that we're going to win every single battle in the transfer market. It doesn't mean we're going to be able to pip any club to any player anytime. Because at the end of the day, Chelsea have plenty to offer that Arsenal simply can't at the moment. And that is the reality of it. I've seen some of the reaction online, you know, people sort of with their heads in their hands, you know, really upset, really frustrated, broken almost about the fact that it looks like Raphinha is Chelsea bound. But I'll tell you what, this is where, you know, when people say to me very, very often on this channel, on this podcast, they say to me, you accept mediocrity. And that is the problem with you. You know, you're happy to accept defeat in matches. You're happy to accept defeat in the transfer market. I'm not happy to accept any type of defeat. But I'm not deluded enough to think that Arsenal, in their current form, a club that are not in the Champions League, a club that, you know, okay, are fairly wealthy and are throwing a bit of money about in this window, etc., etc. I was not deluded enough to think that if we went toe-to-toe with some of these clubs, we'd come out on top. Chelsea can offer Champions League football to Raphinha, as well as probably more money than the Arsenal can, and they're also willing to meet Leeds' valuation of the player. Now, what I find really, really interesting about this is if Arsenal are as keen on Raphinha as has been indicated to us throughout the transfer window so far, then why are Arsenal so reluctant to go on and match that valuation, or at least get closer to it? Is it because we need players to leave first? Is it because it could potentially scupper another deal, i.e. Lisandro Martinez? there's got to be a reason that Arsenal haven't just gone all in on this, because if we're spending the amounts of money that we're talking about Arsenal spending this summer, I don't believe that £5-7 million is something that they can't stretch to do. So I think there must be more to this in that. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for Arsenal. Please don't take it that way. I'm not trying to paint a picture that Arsenal have done their investigations, Arsenal have done their assessments and have come to the conclusion that actually Raphinha is not a good fit. So don't believe that for a second. I think he would be a great fit. I think he's everything we need in a wide player. He's brilliant in possession, wonderful left foot, scores goals, produces assists, contributes in so many different ways, plays with a high tempo, a high intensity, compress. He does all of those things to a T. And he feels like a really Mikel Arteta player. But clearly, well, it looks like, anyway, we're going to lose out. And we're going to miss out on this opportunity to bring Raphinha in. So there is an air of disappointment. There is a frustration inside me right now. As I said, right at the top of the video, I'd be lying if I denied that. But does it undo the good work that we've done in the window so far? You know, Chelsea have come in at the last minute and gazumped us ultimately with more money, but secondly with something that we can't offer, and that is Champions League football. What I would say is if I were a player joining Chelsea, I would be a little bit reluctant at the moment, just because similarly to what I say about Spurs, I think what they've got right now is built on really shaky foundations, in that there's a lot of change going on at the football club. Is Thomas Tuchel going to be there in the near future? You know, what other changes are going to happen, and what would that mean potentially for your career? And it's the same at Tottenham. Do I think that Antonio Conte is going to be there for more than another season, for example? Not sure. So if I were a player and my decision to join Tottenham, for example, was based solely on Antonio Conte, I'd think twice about it. So all of these things come into play, right? But at the end of the day, Chelsea have been incredibly successful over the last couple of decades with Roman Abramovich at the helm. Things are changing now, but they're still closer to challenging for the game's major honours. They were European champions the season before last. In their current state, and in our current state, they are in better shape to push on and challenge for the title, particularly if they go big this summer, which we know Chelsea have the wealth to do, and add to an already more talented squad than what we have. So you can understand why a player would look at Chelsea and say, that's a better fit. That move appeals to me more. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's Arteta's fault or Edu's fault, or that the knives need to come out for those guys. Let's sit back, let's relax, let's look around the market, let's see what Arsenal are going to do instead of bringing in Raphinha. Just like the Fabio Vieira, talk came out of nowhere, and bang, we heard about it, and within a day or two, we'd heard there was confirmation, and then the announcement came pretty damn quickly after that. Why do we as fans rule out the possibility that Arsenal do have other targets lined up? And if Arsenal were willing to go up to 40, 45, 50 million, as we were led to believe, that's a pretty substantial sum of money for which you could go out and get a very, very talented wide man. So it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, Raphinha seemed to be the number one choice. And of course, I'd have loved him to come to the football club. But it is what it is. Some things are out of your control. You're not always going to get it your own way, not in any walk of life. And unfortunately, where Arsenal are today is not where Arsenal want to be. And because Arsenal are not where they want to be, they operate from a weaker position when it comes to these types of negotiations than the likes of Chelsea. And there was always a threat, and there was always a possibility that this was going to happen. And this is because Chelsea have a long history of success behind them. Not overall as a football club, but in terms of, the last couple of decades. You compare that to Spurs, who aren't winners, for example. That would tell me, or that is why, ultimately, when people were talking about Spurs being interested in Raphinha, I wasn't too worried about that. But there was always a part of me that knew that if Chelsea jumped into this head first and went all out to try and bring Raphinha in, that they could do it. And they're going to outpower us financially, but also with what they can offer. The appeal of playing for Thomas Tuchel is massive as well, because he is an elite coach. As I've said to you before, don't know how long he'll be there given all the changes at Chelsea. Maybe it's just a matter of time. But you can understand why Raphinha, if he does indeed agree to go to Chelsea, would make that decision. And that doesn't, let me reiterate the point, does not undo the good work we've done in the window so far, or the good work we could still do. But now it's over to you, Arsenal, to turn to plan B. Hopefully there is a plan B, and make sure that you can execute that, and make sure that you can add in an area that I believe we really do need to add. Now, people would argue that there are more priority areas, and I think centre of midfield, for example, is an area I'd prefer to see us address than the wide forward positions. But having said that, you know, we need wingers who are more senior. We need wingers who we can rely on to produce week in, week out, and who we're not going to look at sometimes and say inexperience cost them there, or they're running on empty, or they're struggling because they're not quite at that level in their careers yet where they're able to find that consistency week in, week out. So, of course, I'm devastated, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, because from what we've heard, Chelsea have shown no real concrete interest up until this point. But it looks like they're going to step in, it looks like they're going to gazump us, and it looks as though Raphinha is Stamford Bridge bound. And it is what it is. You know, as I say, there's no point crying over spilt milk. There's no point pretending that anybody at Arsenal could have done anything more about it. The one criticism of the club you could have if you wanted to, and, you know, again, you know, this is kind of me playing devil's advocate. You could argue that if Arsenal really wanted him, why didn't they meet Leeds' valuation previously, get the ball rolling, get the deal moving? And if it was further down the line, then perhaps Chelsea would have decided to leave it. But maybe Chelsea, having been keeping close eyes on the situation, would have made that move earlier had they thought that we were a threat in their attempts to land Raphinha. So it swings and roundabouts, really. But look, it looks like we're going to lose out. You know, when we talk about the other targets that, you know, we've sort of set for this summer, you think about the centre forward that we wanted. We've done that. We've got it in the bag. Clearly, the club wanted Fabio Vieira. They got that done. They got it done really quickly. We know that they've been looking at Marquinhos for a while. They managed to get that over the line. They're on course, it seems, to get Lisandro Martinez in from Ajax. So that's another target that we would have acquired. If we end up with 2 out of our 3 primary targets, you'd have to say that's a relatively successful window. But with this wide position, I still think it needs addressing. I am gazumped by this. I kind of, when I read it, I kind of like the oxygen just sort of came out of my lungs, like a big breath out, like just, like, come on. Like, where were you all this time? And you've just kind of waited for Arsenal to tee it up, waited for Arsenal to bring Leeds to the negotiation table, and then you've just slipped in at the last minute and made a bid that you know ultimately puts us out of the race. And even if it doesn't put us out of the race, like I was saying to some mates of mine that I was out for dinner with tonight, you know, we're going to see just how much Arsenal wanted Raphinha now. If Arsenal go and match Chelsea's offer and leave it down to the player, and the player chooses Chelsea, nobody can turn around and say that Arsenal didn't try. But the flip side of that is that if Arsenal are going to walk away from this now, it's probably for a couple of reasons. The first one might be that they don't think that they can or want to stretch to the price that Chelsea have named, that Leeds have named for Raphinha. Or the second reason could be that they've had an indication from his representatives that he wants to join Chelsea, in which case, what is the point? Because that offer would not even be worth the paper it's printed on. So yeah, disappointing turn of events tonight. But as I say, keep positive, keep the faith. Let's see what the rest of the window holds for us. Let's enjoy the fact that we've got Gabriel Jesus in the door. I think we'll probably get an announcement, as I say, on Wednesday with regards to his arrival. Hopefully they don't drag it out till Thursday. But overall, we're still on course to have a good window. It is disappointing, of course. I'm interested now to see who Arsenal turn their attention to. And of course, we'll be keeping you across all of that on the Chronicles of a Gooner. Make sure you leave a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, as we press towards 22,000 here on YouTube. I'll catch up with you with a full-length episode of the podcast tomorrow. Until then, take care.